Today, my guest is Katie from the United States, who takes LDN for fibromyalgia. Thank you for joining us today, Katie.
Thank you for having me.
Could you tell us your story, please?
Wow. So about 3 years ago, I had noticeable difference of pain that was kind of roving all over my body. And but way prior to that, I had started noticing chronic pain, but I didn't ever call it that. You know, like in my knees, inside of my knees. I had interstitial cystitis, which was chronic pain. My doctor never mentioned it was chronic pain. I just thought that's the way it is for about 10 years prior. But anyhow, about 3 years ago, I was teaching and I had a really stressful year. My partner teacher was going through some issues that were pretty stressful, so I had to take on the whole team. We also had a notorious group of sixth graders that year that ever since kindergarten, they had been kind of known for being tough. And just some other things kind of all came together. And the summer, just when I started noticing the roving pain that wouldn't go away, my partner, who we had been teaching together for 16 years, so it's kind of like a marriage in some ways. We're very, very close. She ended up taking a job at the middle school, which in where I taught sixth grade was in the elementary. And so that meant I had to start all with new teachers and train them, and it's kind of a team situation. So that summer, we had traveled out to California, and I just couldn't get the pain to stop. I would massage and so on, and it was just kind of traveling all over. Now, prior to all of this, I have always been really active. You know, hiking and backpacking and canoeing and kayaking and things like that. So this trip out to California was to be that. We were going to Yosemite and camping and backpacking and such. And that drive, we ended up driving from Michigan to California, which is a very long drive. I was just in a lot of pain, and I do yoga, and so I'd stretch and all that, but nothing was relieving the deep muscle pain I was feeling. When I got back, that after that summer, it just kind of stayed. I just kind of went forth. But when I got back to school and had the two new teachers I had to train and all that, what hit me and what really was debilitating was brain fog. I could not flow. Like I had taught for 32 years, and it was my love, and I was a natural, and I could always come up with words and kind of fly by the seat of my pants. You know, I always knew what my lessons were, but with sixth graders, you have to have humor and kind of be in the now, you know, and I couldn't. And I had no sense of humor. It was horrible. I used to have people come and visit my classroom and watch me teach. And I couldn't even have my principal, who was a wonderful guy, come in to evaluate me that year. I was just so anxious, and I couldn't think straight. It was awful. So I ended up going to, I had just moved, so I had a new GP. And I went to him and said, you know, I don't know what's going on. So he initially gave me Lexapro. And, you know, figuring it was that, and my OB gave me some hormone replacement, and because I was perimenopause. So it just seemed like, okay, that's why. However, it helps somewhat, but not a lot. And by spring break, so this time, about 3 years ago, I was a mess. And my own children, who were diagnosed with ADD when they were in college, said, Mom, you're just like us. You're ADD. That's what the problem is. Go to the doctor. And, you know, so I did. And I brought my husband as character witness. And so the doctor, I could tell, just thought I was kind of stressed out and anxious. But he said, since you're thinking it might be this, let's have you go take a test. And so I did. And to my surprise, I had thought I did well on this computerized test, but instead I scored at moderate to moderately high ADD. And so they put me on Vyvanse, and that did help, along with the Lexapro, seemed to be helping. However, then it kind of snowballed. By the next year, I ended up having to go on long-term leave. And by that point, I knew that the pain was a piece of it. I mean, it was still there. The pain was there all the time, but I just would push through. But what was happening is I'd go teach, and then I'd get home and I would just have to crash. So I wasn't making dinner anymore. I wasn't doing anything outside of going to school and working and then coming home. And then on the weekends, I'd lay in bed almost all weekend, even though I had my granddaughter over, who was 2 at the time and cute, and I wanted to play, and I'd try to get up and I couldn't play with her anymore, and I'd go back in bed, and I was getting more and more sad. And so anyways, luckily this new GP that I had said, after he had done all sorts of tests, blood work and all this, he said, I think you might have fibromyalgia. And so with that, I ended up getting into a program that's here where I live, at a rehabilitation center that was multidisciplinary pain management kind of boot camp, if you will, for 10 weeks. And that's when I learned about kind of Dr. Daniel Claw. I'm not sure if you know of him, but he's out of U of M, and he talks about the overamped nervous system that causes pain in people with fibromyalgia, and it all really made a lot of sense to me. So anyways, when I first went diagnosed as fibromyalgia, the doctor insisted that I take Cymbalta, and I was very anti because I researched it and it was really scary, all the reports I had. But finally, I was just in such a bad way, and I wanted to get back to work because I was at that point on long-term leave, that I started taking it. And I ended up taking it for about 6 months. And I went to that 10-week program, and I started feeling better, but not yet. I knew I couldn't go back to teaching. So it just so happened I turned 55 that summer after my diagnosis, and I had been on long-term leave since December. So I retired, and I had my 32 years in, so I could, which was not at all how I wanted to end my career. So let's see what happened there. All right, so after that, I decided to get off Cymbalta. It took me 3 horrible months to detox from it. It was really awful. And I am very afraid of going back on any drug like that. And while I'm a teacher and I love learning, and so as soon as I got diagnosed for real, like at that 10-week, they did this extensive interview and all those kinds of things. So they officially diagnosed me there. I started researching, and I found one of the first people I found online was, her name is Donna, and she writes a blog post called Fed Up with Fatigue. And she's a big proponent of LDN, and she takes it for herself. And so I had read a lot about it. And then later I met another person who writes a blog called Melissa versus Fibromyalgia or something like that. And she also takes LDN, and had actually, she just wrote a post about it. It's her 4-year anniversary. And besides that, a doctor who specializes in fibromyalgia and has it herself, Dr. Geneva Lipton. I watch, like, I'm a fangirl of hers, and I watch every video, and I read her books and posts, and she talks extensively about using LDN. So I finally took, and I then stumbled on the LDN Research Trust website and the Facebook group and all that. And so I took the research that was on the website, and I sent a few different things to my GP. And luckily, he's been very open to trying. So he said he wasn't real keen on it. He said, I'll give you 1 month's worth, and we'll see, you know, because it's off label, it's not covered by insurance, that kind of thing. I had to find a compounding pharmacy in the area, which I did, and they were familiar with LDN, which helped. Because he didn't even know what to prescribe. And initially he prescribed 4.5, and through the Facebook group and some other articles I had read, I knew that would probably be too much for me. So I talked with the pharmacist, and they suggested starting at 2. That ended up being way too much for me. And I ended up having to start at 0.5 milligram, I think, or no, it was 0.25. Yeah, 0.25 milligram is where I started. And so this April 15th will be my 1-year anniversary, and I'm now at a dose of 4.0 milligrams. So it took me real slow titration up. Because I don't have a doctor who's very familiar with LDN and that, I kind of just go by what I read on your website and that. And one suggestion I had gotten, because I was struggling with getting to sleep, taking it at night, was that for fibromyalgia. Oh, and I was also running out of energy early in the afternoon, and focus, and my pain would ramp up again and things. So I am currently trying 2.0 mg just like at 9 o'clock at night, and then 2 milligram in the morning on waking. And that seems to be doing pretty well for me. Let's say an hour after I take my medicine in the morning, maybe half hour, then I'm pretty good. Like right now, I'm clear-headed for the most part. I have enough energy, you know, as long as I pace, I don't run out of energy until the evening. About 7 o'clock, I notice I drop quite a bit. And then my pain level right now is like a 2. Whereas if I don't take it, you know, an average day might be a level 5 out of 10. A really bad day for me is more like a 7. So I don't get, you know, horrible, but it's enough where it's debilitating, and it drives me nuts. So that's kind of my short. I was very fortunate, I have to say, to get diagnosed as quickly as I did, and then to have that 10-week program where I saw a pain psych, pain doctor, PT, and OT doctor. Yeah, so that really helped me. And then, of course, finding people who talked about LDN. That was I feel like I moved forward a lot faster because of all of that.
There are some people who do split dosing, and they normally put it on the dose they were on before. So you were on 4, so they would take 4 in the morning and 4 in the evening. So that's something
really?
you might, because it doesn't stay in your system, your body still only sees it as 4 milligrams twice a day. It doesn't see it as 8 because it's not in your system at the same time. So, you know, if
this is what I need, you know, I don't have somebody I could just like, yeah.
So, you know, I'm not a medical professional. I can't give you advice, but I can tell you what other people do. So, I mean, if you feel that it's not working as good for you, you could try titrating them both up and seeing if that gives you better energy.
All day.
So you don't feel as though you flag at all. It might be something worth thinking about. But when you said to me how high a dose you started on initially, I thought, wow, I bet she says that was too high, because you'll be surprised. People with fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome, that population of people are usually always ultra sensitive to all drugs, and LDN is still a drug. And I would have thought you would have started, as you said, you went back to 0.5. That would usually be the starting point. And like you say, you dropped even lower to 0.25, which I'm not at all surprised at. The mantra is to start low and go slow. So
Yeah.
that's exactly what you did. So that's
Yeah.
fantastic. I mean,
yeah, with guidance, like I said, the Facebook group was very helpful. And then your website gave a lot of research and, articles that I found. Plus I talked to Donna a bit, and she kind of gave me some ideas, kind of needed. Oh, and the pharmacist also helped me because he was pretty knowledgeable, but he still was kind of saying, oh, you could probably start at a little higher. And after the 2, it was really bad, actually. I was throwing up. It was really bad. And so I stopped I stopped for about 48 hours to kind of clear the receptors, because I wasn't going to give up. I was like, no, I just had faith that this was going to work. And so then I went back to, starting very, very low. And then I kind of titrated up by 0.25, like every 2 weeks at first, kind of thing. I didn't go very quickly at all. And then I've been kind of at the 4.5 to 4 for a few months now, just trying to figure out if something's better, because I know with LDN, more isn't necessarily better.
exactly.
But yeah, so I had never heard about that, as far as if you do the split dosing, that you might do it at the 4.
Yeah.
I'll look into that.
What would you say as in the length of time it took before LDN actually helped with your pain levels?
So after that first awful week, and then clearing, and then starting at the 0.25 milligram, that first weekend, like I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And, I think people in my situation are pretty known for overdoing it when we feel good, which I kind of did. But I had 3 wonderful days where I went hiking, I went swimming with my granddaughter, I raked. It was, April, so we were cleaning the yard, and I felt wonderful for 3 days, and then I flared because I had really overdone it, but still it wasn't as bad as it would have been, and the clarity of thinking. So that I have told a lot of people that I feel like I could always push through the kind of pain that I have for the most part. For me, it's like having a toothache all over my body, and it's real deep, with certain areas kind of more pronounced than others, but it's something I can mostly push through. But it's the fatigue and the not being able to think clearly that really stops me from functioning. And that's where I really have a difference because of LDN, I think.
Because when you lose the clarity of mind, it's very frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very frustrating.
Yes. Like right now, I write a blog, and, when I can't think straight, there's no way I'm going to write any words down or, anything. So, yeah.
Well, that's an amazing story, and I'm sure that would be very inspirational for other people. So thank you for sharing that with us today, Katie.
Thank you for having me.